So this video, we'll talk about the driving rates, answer key. Number one, what does 30 miles per hour mean? 30 miles per hour literally means we go 30 miles in 1 hour. Every hour we go another 30 miles. 30 miles every hour. So if I drive 30 miles an hour for an hour, how far have I driven? Again, we just said 30 miles an hour means you drive 30 miles in 1 hour. So 30 miles per hour times an hour. Again, the hours will cancel, leaving me with just miles. So it's 30 miles. Again, that's what 30 miles per hour means. In an hour, you'll drive 30 miles. You need to understand this basic idea for us to be able to do the rest of these problems. So, if I drive for 2 hours at 30 miles an hour, how far have I driven? Again, every hour we drive 30 miles, so now I'm driving for 2 hours, so that would be 60 miles is how far we drive, right? 30 miles an hour for 2 hours gives me 60 miles in total. If we drive 30 miles an hour for 3 hours, then how far have I driven? Again, 30 miles an hour for 3 hours means 30 miles an hour every hour. 3 hours means I've done 90. Again, notice every hour I go another 30 miles. Now let's consider driving at 45 miles an hour for an hour. How far have I driven if I've driven for 1 hour at 45 miles an hour? That means I've driven 45 miles. Again, 45 miles per hour times 1 hour. Again, notice that the hours will cancel, leaving me with just miles. So if I drive for 45 miles for 2 hours, how far would I have driven? That would be 90 miles. Again, every hour I drive another 45 miles. That's what that miles per hour means. So if I drive for 2 hours, that's 90 miles. 45 and another 45. Driving for 3 hours at 45 miles an hour, then what would that answer be? That'd be 135 miles. 135 miles. Again, at 2 hours and 90 miles, another 45 miles an hour means I've driven another 45 miles, which means 135 miles for 3 hours. This is 45 miles per hour times 3 hours gives me my distance. Speed times time gives you distance. Let's extend this idea then to driving 61 miles an hour for an hour. Again, how far have I driven? But now you should be able to tell us that that's 61 miles. At 28 miles an hour for an hour, then I've driven 28 miles. What if I drive 60 miles an hour for 7 hours? Then how far have I driven? So if I drive 60 miles an hour for 7 hours, that would be 60 miles per hour times 7 hours would be 420 miles. Again, every hour I'm driving 60 miles. So 60 miles, 60 miles, 60 miles, 60 miles, 60 miles, 60 miles, 60 miles. That's 7 times that I'm going another 60 miles. 60 times 7 is 420 miles. Again, it's just your speed or sometimes velocity multiplied by the time gives you your distance. One of the ways we can think about it is 60 miles an hour means I've driven 60 miles in 1 hour. Now that I'm driving 7 hours, I ask myself, should my answer be more or less than 60? Since I go 60 miles in 1 hour, and now I'm going 7 hours, my answer should be more. So I think if it's more, should I multiply or divide? Definitely want to multiply, and that's what gives me the 420. Miles per hour is a rate. Rates are often something per something else. So miles per hour. What are other types of rates? Take a moment and try to figure those out. You know a lot of different rates. Something per something. Here's a few examples. Remember the slash here means per. So like dollars per gallon. It means dollars per gallon. That slash means per. Feet per second. Inches per hour. Dollars per night. Those are just some of many different types of rates that you can have. When we start seeing rates, that'll start letting us know that we're dealing with linear things. And knowing that it's linear things will help us be able to solve different types of problems, because we're going to talk about the different kind of linear techniques we can use to solve these problems. So something per something often is a rate. Rates are often a slope. In math, we often use slope and rates interchangeably, even though they're technically different. Slope is a rate without the unit labels, and it's just a ratio, whereas rates are ratios with unit labels. Like these up above, where dollars per gallon would be a rate, like it's $8 per gallon. That's a rate. If I just said 8, then that could be my slope, even though it's talking about dollars per gallon.